Sorry to keep you waiting. I can't believe it's been 10 years since this game came out. I'm not gonna lie, when I saw Nintendo's tweet that the 3DS turned 10 years old last year, I had an existential crisis. But enough of that, back to Kid Icarus Uprising. This game has been my obsession for the past 10 years. I watched so many videos covering this game, but they only really ever covered the story. Don't get me wrong, the story's amazing, but the multiplayer in Kid Icarus Uprising is definitely one of Nintendo's finest. And it's a damn shame it's overlooked, so that's what I'm here for today. To give you a quick tour of all the mechanics that this multiplayer has to offer, so that hopefully you can start playing this game, and maybe even convince your friends to play it too. Just a heads up, you have until March next year to buy this game off the eShop. So with all of that out of the way, this multiplayer is absolutely broken, but god damn it's fun as hell. From the outside looking in, this multiplayer seems impossible to play, but hopefully this guide will help you understand how to play it. So before we do anything cool, I'm just going to go over the controls really quick. So you want to go down over here to options, go to controls, control configuration, circle pad default, touchscreen default, and really the only thing that I suggest for you to change is your use power button. I say this because using powers is like very important for multiplayer. The faster you can reach and use your powers, the better. They're basically like your get out of jail card, depending on the situation and what powers you have. So I would definitely recommend setting this to something you're comfortable frequently reaching for and using. Now, moving on. So next up, we got reticle and camera. Select land battle. You want a good balance between fast sensitivity and your ability to control said fast sensitivity. So for me, I have mine set to stop quickly over here on this bottom one. The description on the text basically tells you what it is. And then these top knobs just adjust your sensitivity for vertical movement or horizontal movement. I can't stress enough that I think this will affect how you play in multiplayer, that you should aim for a good comfort zone between extra speed and a little bit extra control as well. Sorry to left-handers that want to play this game, y'all got done dirty by Nintendo. So before we move on, I do want to talk about the peripheral that came with the physical copy of this game, the Nintendo 3DS stand. The game was for better or worse design with this stand in mind, so if you don't have one, I would definitely recommend grabbing one. I think any stand will do, but if you want to know which one I'm using personally, I'm using the Nintendo Switch stand that's manufactured by Hori. And I'm also using the Nintendo DSi XL stylus, because it's a lot more ergonomic than the base Nintendo 3DS one. Being comfortable while playing this game should be a priority, so whatever works for you, it's all good. I think if you stick to this game for like a week or two, and got comfortable with the controls, you'll feel how significant the difference is on how fast you can play this game. And honestly, this game plays absolutely amazing if you can get used to the controls. So with all of that out of the way, let me show you a montage I made. The music is made by Graphiqsgroove. Definitely check out their channel. Seriously, their stuff is so good. I'll put a link in the description, just definitely check them out. Alright, I'm done wasting your time. Let's just get straight into the montage. Here you go. So next up we got weapons. And oh boy, I hope you're ready because this is going to be really long. So there are 9 different weapon classes. Starting off, we got blades, we got stabs, claws, arms, clubs, cannons, bows, palms, and lastly, orbitars. And inside each of these weapon classes, there are 12 different weapons. So essentially, there's 108 different characters to play in this game. Full disclaimer before we get any further, there are weapons that you need to unlock throughout your playthrough of Kid Icarus Uprising. I'll put a link in the description for the Kid Icarus Uprising Wiki. They have a full list of how to unlock all the weapons. I will say, though, that if you care about spoilers, I would definitely recommend just playing the entirety of the game first before you look at it, if you care about that. Just letting you know. So, with that being said, let's move on. I'm going to briefly address weapon classes. Every single weapon class has its own tutorial weapon, so that's what I'm going to be using for this section of the video. So this is going to be in the order of First Blade, Insight Staff, Tiger Claws, Fortune Bow, Violet Palm, Ore Club, Easy Cannon, Standard Orbitars, and Crush Arm. Blades are a versatile beginner class. They're balanced and well suited for common ranges of battle, such as close quarters and medium range. If you don't know what weapon class you want to use, you can never go wrong with choosing a blade. Staffs are specialized for long range combat, as they are the snipers of this game. If you can land your shots, you can deal massive amounts of damage with these devastating charge shots. Claws are specialized for close quarters combat. They have a speed boost that allows you to close the distance between you and your opponent easily, which makes up for their lack of range. If you love fast-paced gameplay, this is going to be the weapon class for you. Bows are a stepping stone into medium to long range combat. This weapon class offers high homing charge shots that make landing shots from a distance a breeze. Palms are quite versatile. This weapon class is suited for close quarters to medium range fights with their high homing charge shots for targets farther away, or their high homing continuous fire for close quarter engagements. Clubs are the only weapon class that don't have continuous fire, but in exchange they have extremely powerful charged shots that travel very far. This weapon class also has great melee damage that makes this class usable in all ranges. Cannons are great for close to medium range fights. The benefits of using this class is the explosive radius that happens after you land a charged shot. This can deal damage to enemies nearby, making this weapon type ideal for fights that take place in small areas. Orbitars have a unique property of shooting 2 charged shots that are ideal for canceling incoming fire. This weapon type can quickly alternate between offense and defense as needed, making this class a great all-arounder for all ranges of engagement. Arms are specialized for close quarters combat with their fast charging shots that have short reach, but they also have the farthest melee range that is the best in the game. This weapon class lacks a speed boost, but for what it lacks in speed, it makes up for in power. Alright, so really quick, I just wanted to cover this topic as fast as possible, because I do not have the time to cover the entirety of this. So I'm going to be going over weapon value. You're probably wondering what that even means. You'll see it on the weapon on screen right now. It's a rose staff with 279 value. So basically your weapon's value is tied to how many stars you have, whether it be in ranged or melee, and also your modifiers. So with that being said, range stars are actually the more expensive star, and melee being significantly cheaper to have. There are even negative modifiers that lower your value. These modifiers will really help you in fusing better weapons. But before we get a little bit too deep into that, I should just say that there is a limit to how much value a weapon can have. The current confirmed maximum value is 341. And fusing past 308 value is extremely difficult. So with that being said, it's better not to make weapons with mixed stars. You want to stick to either melee only or ranged only to be as cost effective as possible with value. Value really doesn't mean anything when you're playing solo mode, but in multiplayer it does have some actual use. Like, for example, powers. Powers regenerate faster with a higher value than if you were to have a lower value weapon, like say 100 value. When it comes to game modes, value is a lot more important in Light vs. Dark than Free-for-all, in my opinion. So in Free-for-all, your points are determined by the value of the person you kill, among other things. But in Light vs. Dark, value is the difference between your angel spawning in slower or faster. In Kid Icarus Uprising, there's a mechanic called shot cancellation. I'll leave a link in the description to the spreadsheet that I used for this section. It's a really helpful resource to have on hand. Basically, every shot in this game has a shot cancellation value and a shot health value. The shot cancellation value can range from 1 to 7 naturally without the use of the shot cancellation plus modifier, but with it, you can reach a maximum of 8 cancellation. So when two shots that have the same shot cancellation value collide into each other, they generally cancel each other out. And when a lower value collides into a higher value, the higher value cancels out the lower one. This mechanic can drastically change how you play around your opponent. It's a difference between fighting offensively or defensively. Next up, I'm going to be going over all your options for attacking. Starting off, we have Standing Charge Shot. This shot has the least amount of end lag compared to your other charged options, making this your safest charged shot. Next is a forward dash charge shot. This is the strongest charge shot on most weapons, but because you dash forward, you can potentially put yourself in danger by getting closer to your enemies. Moving on, there is a side dash charge shot. The benefit of this variation is that your fighter dives to the side while shooting, so you could potentially use this to dive to cover and rack up damage with this option at the same time. Lastly, we have the backward dash charge shot. On most weapons, this variation has the most homing properties, but this is also a great defensive option because your fighter moves away from who you're shooting. When it comes to continuous fire and all of its variations, they are all designed exactly the same way as their charged versions, but just with continuous fire instead. When it comes to melee, you have to be close enough to even perform any attack. How close you need to be to perform a melee attack depends on what weapon class you have. And also, the number of hits in your melee combo is also dependent on what weapon class you have equipped. Before I forget to mention it, you can actually do a manual melee dash attack. The benefit of doing it this way is that you don't have to wait to be close enough to your enemy to initiate the melee dash attack. So if you know your enemy is going to be right around the corner, you could hit this and you could potentially just get easy damage. By the way, there's a cooldown for manual melee dash attacks for some reason. Melee dash attacks aren't risk-free. Your opponent can possibly catch your dash attack and retaliate with their own melee combo, which could result in death depending on what weapon they have equipped. Speaking of melee combos, if someone is trying to land the melee combo on you, you can actually contest their attempt with your own melee combo. This will result in a melee clash. We're still unsure what determines who wins these clashes, but you do have an option to perform a dash round to maneuver around your opponent. You can even perform a melee dash attack out of a dash round to catch your opponent off guard. This may seem overkill, but I'm going to go over all your options for getting up. So if you get knocked down and you don't do anything, you'll just lay on the floor. When you're knocked down on the ground like this, you actually take about 1/3 less damage. While you're laying on the ground, whatever you have your align camera button set to, you can press this for a neutral getup. Your other option for getting up is actually rolling. Rolling forward, backward, or to the side all work the same. If you press the attack button at the same time your character is about to touch the ground, you will perform attack. And here's your last option, the get up attack. You can perform this by pressing the attack button while you are already laying on the ground. This will shoot a forward dash charge shot. During your gameplay of multiplayer, there will be situations that you'll prefer using one option over the other. One last thing, don't get too comfortable using the get up attack. It's highly predictable and can be punished hard if your opponent reads you going for it. Status effects are a cool mechanic. These effects can be helpful if you're using them, but if they are used against you, they can be an absolute pain. There are multiple ways these effects can be inflicted, which are weapons with status built into them, weapons with status modifiers, powers, and lastly, items. This is going to be a lot of information, so before I even get started, I'm just going to tell you that the best way to deal with these is by equipping the effect recovery power. The way to unlock this power is just by playing one faraway match. So with that out of the way, let's get started. Poison slowly damages you over a long period of time. Burning rapidly damages you over a short period of time. Paralysis makes moving around harder. Confusion causes your fighter to attack and move randomly. Spinning causes your camera to spin in circles. Shaking causes your reticle to shake around wildly and disables all forms of homing on your weapon. Weakening causes your max HP to be halved for the whole duration. Petrification completely immobilizes you, but you take half damage for the whole duration of it. Freezing immobilizes you, but unlike petrification, freezing doesn't grant you damage reduction. It does, however, have a shorter duration. Eggplant turns your fighter into an eggplant. You can move around while you are afflicted with this status, but you are unable to attack. Tempura turns your fighter into a tempura shrimp. This status, while similar to eggplant, this one is different in that your stamina is severely reduced, so running away is extremely difficult. It's actually possible to combine two status effects at the same time, so here's a list of status that can be combined. So over here on Group A is where all those are at, and over here in Group B are all the status that can't be combined. There are multiple ways to combine status, so I'll just list them off. Using two status powers like, for example, Burning Attack and Confusion Attack, or having a different status as a modifier on a weapon that already has a built-in status, like for example, having a Burning modifier on a Phosphoro bow. I have to say that my personal favorite combination has to be Weakening and Burning. So now, let me just take the time to go over items that inflict status. So first off, we got Poison Cloud. It inflicts poison and shaking at the same time. Medusa Head petrifies you. Cyclone will inflict spinning. Icy Aura will freeze you when you're close enough. Tempura Bomb, you use this to throw at people and it'll inflict tempura. The same goes for the Eggplant Bomb. There are also status cards you can pick up from the ground. These have Fire, Freeze, Poison, Paralysis, and Petrify versions. And when it comes to powers, there's actually not too much powers that outright inflict status. In fact, there's only two. So first off, we got Explosive Flame. This will inflict burning after a while. And the cooler power is actually Virus. When you're in range of this will inflict weakening and paralysis at the same time. So the other powers that inflict status will just make it so that your attacks will inflict the status power that you equipped. So this will cover basically every single status. There is random effect that'll just let you roll for what status you're going to use. Quick honorable mention is Darkness. I'm not going to count this as a status because you can't actually affect recovery through this. Meanwhile, you can for literally everything else. Next up is the powers you can use in multiplayer. There's so many of these that we don't have time to go over everything on this topic, but I'll give you a pretty good general idea of what you should be doing with them. Alright, so the question comes up. What powers should I use? The answer is split on if you're using a melee build or a ranged build. I'm going to give you two power sets as an example. So here's a general ranged set, and a random melee power set I made. Feel free to use these if you want, but anyways I'm going to be dissecting these two sets to explain. So starting off, both of these sets have Effect Recovery and Celestial Fireworks. Effect Recovery is for curing yourself of status afflictions, and Celestial Fireworks is for invincibility frames. I'll go more in depth about that later though. Continuing on into the ranged set. We got Quick Charge. This is to reduce your charging time for your weapon, and this is the reason why it's common among ranged power sets, and why it's a safe option just in case you don't know what power you want to equip. Generally, with ranged weapons, you want to be at a safe distance to attack, but in the case that you are in the danger zone, here's Reflect Barrier. The name is self-explanatory. It's a barrier that reflects all enemy fire back. With this, you can buy yourself some breathing room by using this in the middle of a firefight. Moving on, we have two mobility powers in the form of Sky Jump and Warp. Now, I'm gonna be honest, Sky Jump is my favorite power because this tiny jump allows you to parkour through some maps among some other things. And finally, we have Warp. This randomly warps you to any part of the map when used, and there is almost no limitations on when you can use it. So if you're in a bad situation, definitely don't hesitate to use this to escape. Yeah, they somehow managed to make that taste worse. Oh, hell no! To wrap things up for this power set, I built this set to maximize survival time by adding in defensive tools like Reflect Barrier and mobility powers, while also being capable of shooting out constant damage with Quick Charge that synergizes greatly with ranged playstyle. Now, let's move on to the melee set. So your goal with melee is to rush down people and preferably without taking too much damage. Since we already covered some of these powers previously, we're just going to be moving on to Super Armor. Super Armor is great to have for damage reduction, as well as knockback prevention, which is vital for consistently connecting melee combos. Next up is Meteor Shower. This is a power attack that will summon meteors to fall in a straight line, dealing damage to anyone in their path. This power packs a lot of punch, but it also cancels incoming fire that comes in contact with it. So with this power you can punish people who are hiding behind reflect barriers. The last power on the list is Black Hole. This power summons a black hole that drags players into the center of it. The point of having this power in a melee set is that once you close the distance with your opponent, you make it hard for them to escape. So when building a power set, you should definitely see what your weapon excels at to synergize powers that will boost your effectiveness. Just note that having many powers can be detrimental if you struggle scrolling through your power bar on the bottom screen. Here's a quick tip: if you use a D-pad, you can actually go from the start of your bar to the end of your bar really fast. Now we're finally going to cover invincibility frames via powers. If you pay attention to when your fighter is using certain powers, you'll notice that your fighter starts glowing blue. This indicates that you now have invincibility frames. You can use these to your advantage by dodging attacks that you otherwise couldn't naturally. There are powers that have different forms of invincibility that don't cause your fighter to glow blue, which I'll just list off right now. So the list goes as follows: Playing Dead, Brief Invincibility, Trade-Off, and even Angelic Missile. Celestial Fireworks is by far the best power for this because it has the highest regeneration rate of all powers. So upon death, you regain almost all your fireworks depending on what value your weapon has. So with this knowledge, you can give yourself a tiny break from a firefight to decide what your next option is using these invincibility frames. Hell yeah, let's fucking go!
Nice work, Pit.
Now I'm going to give you a brief overview of the types of items you can pick up off the ground in multiplayer. These vary from food you can pick up off the ground for health, down to miscellaneous stuff like jump pads. There's items that grant temporary buffs to your fighter, and lastly items that should have stayed in Smash Brothers but they're here anyways, and they do a massive amount of damage. Since there's an enormous amount of items in multiplayer, I'll just go over the ones that you should look out for. So in the buff category, you should definitely look out for the power-up drop. Basically, this is Kid Icarus Uprising's version of the star from Mario. You are completely invincible when you pick this up, and you can also reflect any shots that come into contact with you. Next up is a Happy Trigger. This item will drastically decrease your weapon's charge time, so you can shoot charge shots way faster than normal. Moving on, we got the Dodge Token. With this item, your fighter will dodge shots automatically until it wears off, and if you have Evasion Plus modifiers on your weapon, with this item, you're basically untouchable. There's also the Speed Boots. These grant your fighter a large movement speed bonus. Lastly, there's all the food items. This is one of the only ways to recover health during a match, so if you see some food on the ground, definitely pick it up. Moving on to the degenerate items in multiplayer. The X-Bomb. This item should have stayed in Smash Bros. When it explodes, it breaks up into 4 pieces that deal a massive amount of damage to anyone that comes into contact with it. Boom Rocket is a rocket that shoots up in the air and takes a few seconds to come down, but when it comes down, oh boy, the explosive radius is massive and deals a ridiculous amount of damage. So definitely try to sneak this into a spot where people constantly travel through on the map. Next up is a Smart Bomb. When this item makes contact with something, it explodes and expands slowly until it dissipates. The damage isn't impressive, but the real benefit of this item is how it traps anyone that is unfortunate enough to get caught in one, allowing you to shoot at the fighter stuck in it. Now, before we move on to the big boy, here's the grenade. When thrown, this item will detonate on contact of anything. This item travels so fast that it's almost impossible to see it coming if you don't know someone has this. Now, the item you've all been waiting for. Daybreak. Similar to Kirby's Air Ride, the multiplayer for this game also has a 3-part item to collect that has the potential to change the outcome of a match. Daybreak isn't guaranteed to spawn every match, but when it does, you'll often have fights over pieces among other fighters. Once Daybreak is completed, you can shoot it. This fires an enormous beam of light that deals devastating damage in a straight line. This can be avoided using invincibility frames because there's a flaw in how Daybreak was designed. It's only one massive hitbox that doesn't linger. Funnily enough, this item is actually more threatening in Smash Bros. Ultimate, where it shoots a constant hitbox. Now we're finally going to cover game modes. I'm going to start with Free-For-All because it's really easy to explain. It's every fighter for themselves in this 6-player deathmatch. The goal of this game mode is to have the highest score out of everyone in the lobby. And yes, you heard me right. Score, not kills. The way score is determined boils down to the difference in value between your weapon and the opponent's weapon that you killed, and also if you damaged your opponent and someone else finished them. I'm pretty sure I'm missing a few other scenarios regarding points, but it doesn't change the fact that free-for-all basically boils down to kill enemy equal good. You want a weapon that's really strong for this game mode if you want to consistently get kills because you want to be able to wrap up fights quickly, otherwise someone will swoop in and steal your kill. Speaking of stealing kills, this is what you're ultimately going to be trying your best to do to increase your chances of victory. Mega Laser is very common to see in free-for-all matches because it travels the entire map instantly and deals damage, which is perfect for sniping off low health fighters. One funny thing you can use is actually the tombstones that spawn every time a player is killed. They have a small delay between when they are spawned and when they can be shot at to explode. This has a deceptively large hitbox, so if you see a bunch of people grouped up next to a tombstone, just blow it up.
God damn it, he swung the fucking tombstone on me.
Speaking of health, that actually reminds me, I need to go over fighter health. So at base stats, your fighter has a maximum health value of 221 or 222, I honestly forgot. But anyways, there's actually a hidden comeback mechanic in free-for-all. If you die twice at any time in the match, you actually receive a 30% health boost to your maximum health, and on top of that, you also receive a 30% status resistance boost. So before we move on to Light vs. Dark, I do want to cover one last topic that I need to get out of the way, and that is the HUD during multiplayer matches. So during a match, you'll notice very quickly that there's this orange thing that keeps popping up on the screen. I don't remember what this thing is called, so I'll just call it the damage warning. This basically gives you visual feedback to where shots are being shot around you, and if someone is trying to melee attack you. But honestly, by the time this thing shows up for melee, it's kind of already too late. This, combined with great sound design for the game, can help you find opponents firing at you quickly. Now, on to the last thing I wanted to touch on. The bottom screen. This gives you a ton of information that will help you during a match. Like what power everyone is using, and if they have items that grant temporary buffs like the power-up drop. I can't emphasize enough to check the bottom screen, this is really important. Now finally, the game mode that defines Kid Icarus Uprising's multiplayer. Light vs. Dark. Skyworld's mightiest sport.
Let's do this!
This game mode is what keeps me playing multiplayer to this day. There's 3 fighters on each team. On one side there's Light Team, and on the other there's Dark Team. During a match, you'll notice that whenever someone is defeated in battle, their respective team's life gauge will lose health. The goal of this game mode is to cause the other team's life gauge to drop completely, which is done via defeating light or dark fighters. When that happens, Pit or Dark Pit will spawn onto the field depending on which team's life gauge was reduced to 0 health. And if one of these angels' life gauge are completely drained, they are knocked out, meaning victory for the team that defeated them. So there's a lot to cover when it comes to this game mode. For example, the angel's life gauge will be reduced every time a fighter is defeated, but you can't defeat the angel this way, and the amount of health they can lose this way is capped off to around the last 10% of their life gauge. And if the timer for the match runs out, the team with the most health left in their life gauge wins. If you are wondering what the settings for public matches are, they're the same as the default settings for creating your own room, so the total life gauge value in public matches is 900. This number is important because this is directly tied to your weapon's value. The exact value on your weapon is reduced from the life gauge every time you are defeated. The value sweet spot you want for your weapon is a 299 value. So for example, if all your teammates had a 299 value weapon and were defeated once, that would mean your team life gauge reduced by 897, meaning that your team can spawn one more fighter before your respective angel is spawned. According to the game's loading screen, the angel has increased health, speed, and power. And while we're on the topic of the angel, when someone is spawned as the angel, they'll receive a random weapon. Whether this weapon has modifiers or not, we still don't know to this day. Choosing your fights wisely as the angel is the best way to increase your chances of victory. So there's nothing wrong with running away and waiting for your opportunity to attack. Now I'm going to go into a bit of my thought process when playing light versus dark that I think will help you. So the question I'm going to get into is, who should you turn into the angel? So for example, if someone is using a problematic weapon like say the Icarus Uprising with powers that make it the ridiculous weapon it is, you and your teammates can gang up on this person to attempt to turn them into the angel, and with good luck, they're spawned in as the angel with the weapon that hardly benefits from the power set they built specifically for the Icarus Uprising. Like, for example, a melee weapon. There's also a different approach to this as well, like if your opponent is too hard to kill, so instead of changing them into the angel, you can look for their weakest link on their team that is way easier to kill. I'm constantly worried about this version that I usually end up making sure that I turn into the angel by using powers like Skyjump to purposely drop my team's life gauge to make it so that I spawn as the angel, since usually I have defensive powers that are beneficial for drawn out matches. It's probably for the best so you don't try this because your teammates will probably hate you if your team loses because of it. Moving on, I do want to briefly talk about team composition. Now if you're playing on public matches, you aren't going to have any say over this. But if you're playing amongst friends and things are getting heated, the team composition I prefer is 2 ranged weapon fighters and 1 melee fighter. Ranged weapon fights can be a long and drawn out firefight, but if you got your melee weapon teammate to sneak into your enemy's flank, they'll be the bigger immediate threat they have to deal with, causing the opposing team to most likely make mistakes they otherwise wouldn't have if the fight was a 3v3 ranged weapon fight, and will ultimately make your shots easier to land during all the chaos your melee weapon teammate creates. Now on to our final topic of the video, the maps. Now me explaining a map and you playing the map are 2 different things. If you're playing in public matches, then you'll never see the 2 maps known as Large Arena and Small Arena. These 2 maps aren't anything special, they're basically the training room repurposed as a map, with Larger Arena easily being the most forgettable map because it's too big to have normal firefights. Especially when compared to Small Arena where the map is so small that even armed weapons have decent range on this map. Small Arena is basically Smash Bros. The map because you're most likely going to die from being kicked off the stage way before you lose all your health. So with those 2 maps out of the way, it's time for me to cover the maps you'll be playing on normally. Windy Wasteland. This map is the largest regular map in the game. There's always a battle to see who can take the high ground and hold it the longest. Weapons with extremely long range are king here, so with that in mind, this map is also pain and suffering for melee users having to close the distance. Lava Basin. This map has the biggest love-hate relationship. The reason for this is the lava that you can fall into. Knocking down enemies into the lava instantly kills them, which everyone loves doing, but when you're on the other side of the stick, you absolutely hate to see it. Weapons that excel on this map are obviously going to be weapons that can reach every part of this map, but everything is fair game on this map because you're eventually going to respawn near the lava and you will be dunked in there. Starlight Observatory. This map has a really cool aesthetic, but not only that, it also has multiple rooms that allow for every weapon class to have its own special moment, because the size of each room varies from close range up to long range. Ancient Fortress. Magnus theme plays here, so I really don't need to say anything else. Jokes aside, this map has you either fighting from outside in the ruins, where ranged weapons excel, or fighting from the power position of the map, the castle, where most fights would be taking place at that benefit weapons that enjoy close quarter fights. Twilight Stratosphere. This map has 4 platforms you can fight from. There are jump pads on every platform that you use to travel to and from other platforms. As a result of these jump pads existing, melee weapons have a difficult time here because opponents can run away easily using these jump pads. Weapons that can handle medium range fights like bows will have a great time here. Desert Tomb. This map has 3 levels of elevation. The top floor that ranged weapons with high homing properties enjoy, the medium floor that most fights start at, and lastly the bottom floor where fights usually end. Weapon classes that can handle close quarters to medium range combat thrive here. Rail Temple. This map is unique in that it's the only map that has rails they can use to move across the map if you like mobility. This map is easily the best map in the game while also being the most balanced. All weapon classes can shine in this map. Cave of Spirits. This map has twists and turns you can take from almost every angle, as well as the top floor you can use as an escape option. Weapons that rely on long range fights suffer greatly here as opponents can run into cover when needed and flank you. Forgotten City. There are 2 places on the map you can be kicked off the stage from. The first being the high ground from the outside, which is the power position of the map, and the second being this big hole in the middle of the map. The outside of the map benefits longer range weapons, with the rest of the map benefiting close to medium range weapon classes like blades and claws. Spiral Tower. The gimmick of this map is a gigantic spiral tower that is the highest elevated point in all of the map's multiplayer has to offer. Weapons that handle long range combat will have an easy time on this map fighting from the hill with the 2 boulders, or on top of the spiral tower. Medium range weapons do just fine on here as well, but melee weapons will have their work cut out for them on here. So that about wraps it up for the maps. I actually do have some cinematic thing that I made for all the maps. I didn't want to interrupt any of them with explanation, so I just wanted them to flow into each other. So here it is. See you in the outro. If you watched this far in one sitting, you are absolutely crazy, but I appreciate you. It's been my dream to make this video for the past 10 years, and I'm so excited to finally have it finished for people to enjoy. If you enjoyed watching this guide, definitely share this with your friends. Even though this video is absolutely massive, there are so many sections of this video that I had to cut down to save time. So if you have a suggestion on what I should cover on a future video, definitely comment that down below, and while you're there, leave a like. The clips I use in this video span from when I barely got a Nintendo 3DS capture card early last year up until just recently. And with that being said, a majority of the people who I've played with in these clips are mostly from the Kid Icarus Uprising Multiplayer Discord server, where we have matches on the weekends. Definitely join if you want some real players to fight up against instead of the bots you frequently find in public matches. I stream this game frequently on my Twitch and YouTube channel, so if you want to see more of this game, definitely drop a follow on my Twitter and Twitch, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I also have a coffee, if you want to support my caffeine addiction with your donations. So before I head out, I gotta give out a few shoutouts. So the first shoutout is to my boy who runs the UprisingColosseum channel on Twitch. They've helped me on ironing out most of the video, so definitely check them out. I also gotta give a shout out to Joshimation for playing with me on stream about a year ago. And the last shout out goes to the one and only Masahiro Sakurai for making my favorite game of all time that I'll keep playing till the end of time. Hopefully we get a sequel sometime soon, and hopefully not in 15 years. Hell, I'll take anything related to this game at this point. So with that being said, happy 10th anniversary to Kid Icarus Uprising, the best Nintendo 3DS game. Alright, this video is long enough, so I'll see you in the next one. Peace.